Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Chelsea Holley, who's the Director of Admissions at Spelman College. Chelsea, you're the first HBCU that's going to be on the podcast, so I'm really excited to have you. Thank you so much, and how are you today?
Thank you, John. I'm doing well, and I am super excited to be the first HBCU to be gracing your podcast.
Thank you so much. And so let's start, Chelsea, by asking, can you share Spelman College's mission and how it aligns with the broader philosophy of historically Black colleges and universities? And what role do HBCUs like Spelman play in empowering and supporting African-American women, both academically and personally?
Okay, we're starting out with the good stuff. So Spelman College is, of course, best known as an HBCU or a historically Black college and university. But we're also a liberal arts institution as well as a women's college. And each of those three pillars are represented in our mission statement. So we are a global leader in the education of women of African descent. So not only African-American women, but women across the globe that identify as Black or of African descent. We're dedicated to academic excellence first, but we are highly interested in this whole person shaping. We're focused on the intellectual, the creative, the ethical, and really shaping leaders that are going to go on to change the world. Our mission has some unique components, but there is a shared mission across all HBCUs. HBCUs were founded at a time where there were no other educational opportunities for African Americans for college. And so during that time, they immediately began to play a role as an economic engine. HBCUs are credited with shaping the Black middle class for as long as there was a Black middle class. And the stats are still really impressive today. UNCF does a list of pride points that focus on what HBCUs bring to society as a whole. And you'll see stats such as 75% of Black doctors and engineers have attended an HBCU at some point. 89% of Black judges have found themselves at an HBCU at some point in their educational career. And so these institutions started out as kind of the only option for African American students, but what they've turned into now is just this really personalized option to give students a foundation that kind of arms them in the world and gives them an understanding of who they are, an understanding of their history. And the idea is they'll bring that cultural understanding into whatever discipline they choose, whether it's the arts or science or medicine. And I think it really equips not only the institutions with the superpower, but our graduates with a really unique set of skills when they get on into the world.
Well, we appreciate that. And Chelsea, you made it very clear that Spelman is a leader in empowering African-American women. Can you share a success story of a recent graduate whose journey embodies the mission and values that you explained so beautifully?
There is no shortage of amazing recent alumna from Spelman College, but I think I want to talk a little bit about Kathleen Bostick. Kathleen graduated with a degree in biology in 2023. She is originally from Fairfax Station, Virginia. Kathleen will be pursuing an MD, PhD in neuroscience and plans to become an astronaut.
Awesome.
Kathleen received her first award in plant biology at the University of Georgia's Plant Conference in 2022. Since then, she has presented at 10 conferences, winning awards in plant biology, neuroscience, and environmental science. In 2022, Kathleen's work in plant biology was published by the environmental Evidence Journal, making her the youngest Black woman to publish
Wow.
in plant biology. In the fall of 22, she was selected to be Spelman College's second woman in history to receive the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation Award.
Hmm.
The Astronaut Scholarship Foundation is really, really special. And for that ceremony, Joan Higginbotham, retired NASA astronaut and Spelman alumna, was able
Hmm.
to actually hand over that prestigious scholarship to Kathleen.
Wow.
Joan Higginbotham was the third Black woman to go to space, and a Spelman alumna. So it was just a special moment to see those two women on stage.
Well, that is amazing. I'm so glad I asked that question and that you shared those stories. And of course, Spelman College is absolutely known for its rigorous academic programs. Can you highlight some of the signature programs and what makes them particularly unique?
So I'll start with one of our most recent signature programs, which is the cosmetic science program. We are an institution that only grants bachelor's degrees, so there are no graduate programs at Spelman College. But if you look at all of the Black women in the United States that have a PhD in STEM, Spelman is the number one producer of those women who will go on to get a PhD in STEM. And so the cosmetic science program, there's very, very few of them nationally and internationally. And we thought that Spelman would be an amazing home for a cosmetic science program just because of the sheer amount of money that African American
Hmm.
women put into the beauty market, particularly our hair, but
Hmm.
also skincare. And to have a program at Spelman that centers the needs of that population, whether it is devising a special formula that caters to our skin type or trying to get a bigger market share of the African American hair care market. Spelman's really been at the forefront. And so, what I love about many of our academic programs, they have that cultural connection that makes it more meaningful oftentimes for our students, and they feel like they're actually making a difference. So cosmetic science, lots of amazing work is being done there, both on the business front as well as the chemistry side. We have a long standing dual degree program. Many of our students will go on to Georgia Tech. That's one of our longest partners to finish their degree there. So they spend 3 years with us and 2 years in the engineering school of their choice at Georgia Tech. I call that the best of both worlds as someone who used to
Hmm.
work at Georgia Tech. It's a really great opportunity for our students to get the Research One top engineering school education while also feeling the kind of nurturing space that our campus provides them.
Well, you definitely provide them a lot. And by the way, it appears that they're extremely happy on your campus because, Chelsea, I read recently that your retention rate is well above the national average at 91%. This represents the percentage of freshmen that return after that first year. Can you describe the campus culture at Spelman and how it fosters a sense of community amongst all your students?
Yeah, I think this is, hands down the most special element of our community. It's the thing that can't be replicated. It's the
Hmm.
thing that can't be described when families enter our campus. It's equal parts Southern hospitality. I'm an Atlanta native myself, so that's part of what folks feel when they get on our campus. The second part is we are a women's college, and we also have tons of things in common with our other women's colleges. And something that you'll find is this sense of community, sense of authentic sisterhood. There is just this large group of incredibly talented young women who were likely the smartest girls in
Hmm.
their class in high school, and now they're all in this one space. And I think sometimes before folks step foot on our campus, this can feel like an uber competitive space.
Hmm.
But how it manifests at Spelman is a little different. I don't know how many colleges still say this, but back in the day when we were in school, it was
Hmm.
look to your left, look to your right. One of these people aren't going to be here.
Hmm.
At Spelman, it's look to your left, look to your right. You make sure both of those people are here when you graduate. And so there's this
Awesome.
sense of collective success that you'll get from the public safety officer at the front gate to our groundskeepers, to the cafeteria staff, to your faculty. And it really is this authentic wraparound service. I would say adding our alumna base. We have
Hmm.
a very passionate group of alumna that are present on campus. They are in some of the most powerful positions across industries, and they provide mentorship to our students almost immediately. Across the country in August, all of our alumna chapters have send offs for the young women in their cities. And it's speaking life into them on this
Hmm.
journey. It's giving them goodies as they part. And so coming to Spelman literally is like getting an extended family, and you get it from day one.
Well, that's terrific. And, speaking of your alumni base and with such a high retention rate, Chelsea, what feedback do you hear most from students about why they choose to stay and thrive at Spelman? In other words, are there any specific traditions or programs that contribute significantly to this sense of belonging and community?
Yeah, I think our new student orientation sets the tone from a traditional sense. Immediately, we connect the current students with kind of the lineage and the history of what Spelman is. And so I've worked at many institutions, and NSO, has some similar components. You register, you might meet your roommate, get advised. At Spelman, there is quite a few days of programming that
Hmm.
is all about the traditions, all about the history. You're learning the Spelman hymn. They're all kind of neat, secret things that happen that every class for the past 80 years has experienced. And so I think NSO is that first glimpse. We do a program for our admitted students called Spellbound each May, and that's kind of our big admitted student program. This is when you find out for sure if you really want to attend. And some of that kind of magic that I'm sharing at NSO happens even at Spellbound. I talk to girls who may not have been so interested in us, but they showed up at
Hmm.
Spellbound and that was it. It's like I
Right.
get it, 24 hours here, it's cemented, and that I think is just really special for our students.
Well, it's definitely all really special. I appreciate that overview. And I know that you mentioned Georgia Tech earlier and that partnership, but I was curious, what other partnerships or collaborations does Spelman have with any other institutions or even organizations that provide that unique opportunity for all of your students?
So I'd be remiss if I did not mention the Atlanta University Center, also known as the AUC. This is the largest consortium of historically Black colleges in the United States, and we are all clustered together. I hear people ask me all the time, well, how close are you? I can literally see Morehouse from my window of my office, and the same for Clark Atlanta. So this is a very, very kind of compact area where you have three undergraduate institutions. Morehouse College is an all male institution. You have Clark Atlanta University, which is a co ed institution. Clark Atlanta has about 7,000 undergrad students, Morehouse around 3,000. And so now Spelman, which is just a tiny women's college,
Hmm.
has this larger community that they belong to, and that is co ed. One of those kind of big traditions that comes out of our consortium is the Spell House Homecoming. Spell House Homecoming has just finished. It was a couple weeks ago.
Hmm.
And it is HBCU homecomings are just a big deal, regardless. And it often has nothing to do with how good the football team is. Um, but they are a good time. So Spell House Homecoming, you have all of the alumna from Morehouse and Spelman that come back. There's weeks of panels from specific industries. There is, of course, Greek life, sororities, and fraternities. It's just a great time. And that social life between Morehouse and Spelman specifically, I would say, is a large part of the experience. So during new student orientation, we have a tradition called Olive Branch, in which every Spelman sister is matched with a Morehouse brother. Some of those Friendships are, studying for a course together. I know Spelman women who have their Morehouse brother in their wedding. And
Hmm.
so it is something that can often extend beyond just the undergrad years.
Well, that's terrific. I love the olive branch program. I'm glad I asked that question. So you're saying that the sisters from Spelman, they're matched with a brother from Morehouse, which is fantastic because you don't only have all the great things on your campus at Spelman, but you have that partnership with Morehouse, which again, I think is terrific. Since one of you is an all-female school and the other is an all-male, it's wonderful. I'm sure there's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of great opportunities for meeting people and social events. So, you know, another thing that parents and students are really interested in is the overall application review process. So, Chelsea, what is the application review process like at Spelman, and what key factors do you consider when evaluating those applications?
So, Spelman is exclusively on the Common application. So, students can find us on the Common app. We exercise a holistic approach to application review, which means we care deeply not only about your academics, but also all of the things that you have done outside of the classroom. Particularly for Spelman, we are looking for either evidence of leadership or interest and potential to be a leader and a change agent. We recognize that leadership is not always formal. So it may not be president of the BSU or an officer in a club or a captain of a varsity sport. That sometimes leadership shows up in non traditional ways or more informal ways. And we really encourage students to dig into that part of themselves. Did you show up as a member in a club, but did you have a really great idea and mobilize people around that idea? Did you show up as a leader in a course that you were taking where you tutored a student who was having a rough time? Those are the kinds of things that we are looking for in our students and that we hope to fill our campus with. And so our mission certainly informs what we're looking for in that holistic review process.
Well, I appreciate you talking about how leadership shows up in non-traditional ways, and you gave the example of students. Did you come up with an idea in a club, right, to help other people? Perhaps you tutored someone in need. You don't have to be the president of a club, right? There's only one president usually of a club. So, there's a lot of other ways, as you put it, to show leadership, including some non-traditional ways. So we appreciate that. So, of course, another big thing that people always ask about are those standardized tests. So, Chelsea, how important are standardized test scores in your review process? And what advice do you have for students applying test optional?
So, in our review process, standardized test scores are not incredibly important. In fact, fewer than 30% of our admitted students submitted standardized test scores last year. We too were an institution that depended heavily on standardized test scores pre pandemic. We renewed our test optional for about 3 years, and then we made a permanent decision last year that we will be test optional moving forward. We've seen no change in our academic profile of student. In fact, we've seen a pretty sharp increase in how those students perform when they get on campus. So the retention rate has increased, the graduation rate has increased, their first year GPA has increased. And so we share that with students to let them know this is not we're test optional, wink, wink, nudge, nudge,
Hmm.
that it really will not have a bearing on your decision. Our scholarships as well are test optional. Our honors program as well as test optional. And so we're able to assess students without test scores across our admissions review, but also special programs.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that you made a permanent decision to remain test optional. And that's because you did your research. And in terms of student performance, you actually saw that graduation rates went up, your retention rate went up. So, it's just an example of how standardized tests, it's one data point, right? So if you have a great test, you want to submit it, you think it adds to your overall application, certainly submit it. But there's far more to an application review than just that one data point, which we call the standardized test. As you mentioned, there's leadership opportunities. There's the transcript, right? What have you done over 4 years of high school? Did you build ramps? Did you challenge yourself based on the context of what's available at your high school? And of course, how did you perform, right? Because you're looking at two main things. If I had to break it down to two main things, number one, you want to admit students that are able to handle the work in the classroom. But you also, I would imagine, want to admit students, to your point earlier about leadership, you want those students that are going to add to your community, right? Embrace it, add to it, frankly, make it better. Anything else you want to add about any of this?
No, I think it's such a great point to drill down, and we talk a lot about fit,
Hmm.
mostly around your GPA and test score matrix, and are you competitive for that institution? But I think it's so important for students to understand the kind of community that they are entering. For example, we have tons of high school students who are amazing academically, but they may not have much interest in being that involved outside of the classroom. There's a college and a university for that. And on Spelman's campus, so many of our students and so much of the ethos of the campus is around being involved, is around pursuing something that you're passionate about. And so I think it's important for students to be able to articulate that in the application process and let that help guide their decision about what a college finds important and if they would be a fit.
Well, that's great advice and insights, and we appreciate that. And so let's dig a little deeper in the overall application, as this is something that so many parents and students reach out to me about. So, in terms of the personal statement, have you seen any recent trends in students' personal statements? And can you share some tips regarding essays that really stood out?
So I think over the past, I would say 4 or 5 years, there has been an increase in personal statements that are really focused on mental health, social justice issues, how systemic issues affect the student, and personal growth. Big kudos to Gen Z for being so vulnerable, and so thoughtful and insightful about the ways that their experiences are tied into society at large. It makes for some heavy reading days,
Hmm.
but it really is an opportunity for us to get to know the students. So we really appreciate students kind of digging deep and sharing that. I always push back on students that ask me, "What can I do to make myself stand out?"
Hmm.
And it's a valid question, and I want to make sure that students are not too caught up in the strategy of it all. What can I say? What should I do? What kind of person should I be? Because I think when they go too far into that logic, it becomes inauthentic. And so, what I typically tell students, I'll give you an example. We are an institution where the large majority of our applicants identify as Black and female. And because of that, there are some common themes that we see in applications. Hair. If I had to pick a topic that we see the most essays on, it is about hair and particularly how Black women connect to their hair, what it means to them, how it shaped their experiences in society. And you might think that when we see a hair essay, it's, oh no, another hair essay, right? Because you see
Hmm.
so many of them. Um, but you can still make a new and different and insightful hair essay if it's your hair essay. And so I really encourage students to erase the goal of let me try and write about something that they've never heard before, because we've kind of see it all at some point in this business, and to double down on the most authentic representation of themselves. I encourage students to send their essay, of course, to the English teacher or the college advisor if they have one, or their counselor, but give it to like your best friend or your big sister or your
Hmm.
little brother or your mom and say, "Does this sound like me?" If you were someone who's never met me and would likely never get the chance to meet me before they make this life-changing decision, would you say this sounds like me? And I think so many students would be surprised that the people that really know them could give them some insight on how their voice comes through in these personal essays.
Well, that's tremendous advice. And recently, a rep actually said that if the student records themselves on their cell phone reading their essay out loud and then playing it back, it's a different perspective and it also could help you in that application process. I also want to repeat something that you said that really resonated with me, which is you said, don't be caught up in the strategy of it all. Because if you do that, students, then you're going to come off as inauthentic. So you were really hitting home the importance of being authentic, true to who you are, while representing your voice in that personal statement. So I really just wanted to thank you for that, Chelsea. I thought that was awesome. And of course, the letters of recommendation are another part of the overall application. So, Chelsea, what makes a letter of recommendation truly impactful? And have there been any notable examples recently that made a difference in an applicant's evaluation?
Letters of recommendation are that interesting part of the application process that the student feels that they have absolutely no control over.
Hmm.
And to some degree, that is correct. But students have full control over who they choose to write their recommendation. They have control over how they prepare that person to write their recommendation, the amount of time they give them. And so my first advice for students is to really be thoughtful and give the recommender plenty of time to do this, especially if you are at a large school with a large caseload. It is incredibly important. And some people might argue that at schools with a large caseload, even if you do give your recommender a lot of time, that it is still a task for them to give the proper attention to each student. And that's when you help prepare your recommender. Supply them with a brag sheet. Supply them with a resume if you have one. Sometimes a list of the types of schools that you are applying to can help them rise to the occasion about what to write for you. So don't hesitate to do some executive managing of the recommendation process. I would say the most impactful letters of recommendation tend to confirm a feeling that the admissions committee is already having. And again, there's no way for a student to kind of nail this together. But if you supply your recommender with all of the information that could possibly exist about you, and maybe you feel like you're inundating them with this information, this is the exact same information that you're weaving into your application. And so the odds that they might begin to touch on something that is helpful or insightful in your review, it rises. And so those good recommendation letters, they answer a question that maybe is floating around in the back of my head. Well, why didn't the student do this? Or I wonder what they meant when they said this. It begins to fill in some of the blanks of the application and can serve as kind of this second party to confirm a feeling, good or bad, that the admissions
Hmm.
committee is having when reviewing the app.
This is your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Sean Patel, who's the founder and CEO of Prep Expert. Sean, welcome back.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. And I'm so excited to announce that Prep Expert is the official title sponsor of the College Admissions Process podcast. This has been a partnership in the works for a while now, and I'm so glad we got it off the ground. We're so excited to work with families, parents, students of the College Admissions Process podcast at Prep Expert to help them through our live online SAT and ACT courses not only improve their SAT and ACT scores, but help them get into college as well as win hundreds of thousands of dollars in college scholarships. Thank you so much for the partnership, and we are so excited to work with your families.
Thank you, Sean. And to learn more about how Prep Expert can support your child's academic journey, visit prepexpert.com today, and best wishes to all. Well, we appreciate that insight. And I like what you said in the beginning that students feel that they have no control over the letter of recommendation, when in fact, students, you have full control, number one, of who you select to write the letter, while being thoughtful of how to prepare that recommender. right? What materials are you going to give them to help them write the letter so that they're not just simply repeating what's on your transcript, what's on your activity sheet, which wouldn't add to your overall application. So, for example, if there's something specific that happened in a class, perhaps it's in one of the clubs that they're the advisors to and you're a member of, ask them if they would be willing to write about that. And maybe it's, you're helping them to give them an idea in terms of what to write about so that it does add to the overall application. Remember, students, any question that you don't ask is an automatic no, right? So again, if there's something specific that happened, perhaps in a club, and you want that recommender to highlight that, I don't think it's bad to ask, right? If you don't ask, it's a no. But if you ask, maybe they will elaborate on something special that happened to add to the overall application. Would you agree with that, Chelsea? Or what do you think about that?
Absolutely. This is, I call it the first big girl moment or first adult moment for many of our students. No matter how involved the parent is, there are some parts of this process that just fall on the student, and that the onus is on them to kind of see it through. And I think the recommendation letter is certainly one of the more adult and mature parts of the college application process.
Well, we appreciate that. And Chelsea, what are the different ways a student may apply to Spelman? For example, do you have early decision, early action? And is there a benefit to applying one way over the other in terms of both being accepted and being considered for those merit based scholarships?
Spelman has three application plans: early decision, early action, and regular decision. The early decision plan is a binding plan. That deadline is November 1st, and students find out their decision by the first of the year. The early action plan is a non binding plan. That deadline is also November 1st, and students find out before the first of the year. So, the difference between the early action and the early decision is one is binding, one is not. Early action is by far our largest pool. Early decision is by far our smallest pool. We encourage students to only apply early decision if Spelman is their absolute number one choice. We're encouraging students to think and have conversations with their family or support system around finances if they are planning to apply early decision, because that is something to consider for students if they do not receive a financial aid award that makes it possible for them to attend or that they find attractive compared to other offers. It's really important to do all of the research before submitting an early decision application.
Well, we really appreciate that. And of course, I know you have something for all your students, which points to that high retention rate. I was curious, what about students that may have had an IEP, Chelsea, or even a 504 plan while they were in high school? What resources does Spelman offer to support students and help them to continue to be successful once they're on your campus?
So first, when I get questions about accommodations, I like to talk to families about just the differences in how accommodations are treated between high school and college. For high school students, families are used to declaring the accommodations early on and for this to being a continuous part of the high school experience for their student. In college, that information is not asked on the admissions application, although we have many students who might disclose it via their personal essay or additional information, but this is not a part of the admissions review in any way. Once a student enrolls at Spelman College, we have the Student Access Center on campus, which deals with accommodations, whether they are accessibility services, academic accommodations, assistive technology. Students are able to put all of these requests through our Student Access Center, and they work with your faculty, with your staff, with residence life and housing to make sure that Spelman is properly supporting you. In addition to the Student Access Center, we have the Care Team, which I think is just an amazing effort on our campus. The Care Team is an opportunity for current students, staff, even a family of students to put in an anonymous request to the college that basically just says, check on the student. I saw them looking really down after class yesterday, or they're really struggling. They're showing up to office hours, but it's just not clicking. Check on the student. And we have a cross-departmental team across student affairs, our counseling office, our access center, our health services, student life and engagement, to work on a non-threatening way to see what the student needs, start a conversation and let the student lead us in a direction so that we can really find the resources on our campus or maybe even off of our campus to assist a student.
Well, we really appreciate that. And Chelsea, I think, I always put the Office of Undergraduate Admissions in the show notes. If there are any other links to resources, programs, or anything else, please send them to me. And of course, we'll make them available to the students and their parents in the show notes. This has been an awesome conversation. I have to ask before I get to the last question, were there any questions that I didn't ask that you wish I had? Or is there a topic that I simply didn't bring up that you'd like to share with us now?
I want to share a little bit more about scholarships. As I mentioned earlier, 40% of our students are Pell eligible. And for this population of students, financing their college education is incredibly important and often a source of anxiety about how they're going to make it work. Spelman College is a private institution, so our tuition is the same whether you are in state or out of state. We review and consider all of our admitted students for merit scholarships, so there's no additional application that you need to complete to be considered for merit scholarships. But we always are encouraging families to start this conversation early. As you're making your college list, financial fit is going to be super important. And this does not mean crossing off schools if they seem out of your price range. All it means is researching the scholarships, grants, and opportunities available at that institution. Spelman has several full ride merit awards, as well as smaller merit awards. There has also been a rise in corporate scholarships for HBCU students specifically. We have a partnership with Morgan Stanley in which they offer 5 full ride scholarships and a mentorship component, a 4-year renewable award for our students. There is a Code House HBCU scholarship sponsored by Google and Microsoft, Home Depot, Apple. The list goes on of companies that are really wanting to invest in our HBCU students, a population that has not always received the financial support that we've needed and deserve for our students.
Well, I think that's awesome that you brought that up, and it's important for the students to really consider that. Look at the scholarships and grants available at Spelman. Of course, if you're applying to other schools, please do the same. Chelsea, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I cannot thank you enough. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question, which is, what are your top 3 pieces of advice that you would provide students and their families getting ready for the college admissions process?
The first piece of advice is, again, doubling down on being authentic and being who you really are and showing up that way in the application process. I encourage students to get introspective, to be vulnerable, to really get to know themselves throughout this process. It can be really helpful. And ultimately, it's going to help them find the most perfect fit for a college. The second piece of advice is centered around financial aid and scholarships. This is a kitchen table discussion. So do not shy away from really talking about finances early. Parents, you want to manage your child's expectations around what is a reasonable investment for the family. And that's really important to start that early. And the third piece of advice is there are tons of elements of this process that are in your control, but there's a whole lot that is completely out of your control.
Hmm.
And so for students and also parents, please do not wrap up worth in an admissions decision. You will be worthy before your admissions decision and worthy after it. And it's really important to begin to de-stress this process, especially for all of our high-achieving perfectionist students who are expecting a lot, rightfully so. But there's a lot at work in the college admissions process that ultimately has nothing to do with students and how great they are.
I really love that you talked about what you control and don't control. And I have to repeat another quote of yours, which is, don't wrap up your worth in an admissions decision. That was so beautifully said and so beautifully explained because, to keep it in simple terms, there are colleges, for example, that might have a freshman class of 1,000 students. They get 17,000 applications, and the first 30% who are rejected simply because there's no space, their application, their profiles are probably not that different than the students that were accepted. Would you agree with that, Chelsea?
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah. So it's something that I'm so glad you brought up because students and parents need to hear that again. Don't wrap up your worth in an admissions decision. Chelsea, you were awesome. This was awesome. I'm so happy as I know that this is going to help so many students and their parents. Thank you so much for giving up your time and expertise today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, John.
It was an honor and a pleasure. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all and best wishes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP.
Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process Podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office, Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process.